Hey, everybody. I hope your day is going well. Thanks all for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about reclaiming your time. And this is a big one, right? Because how many of us would love to do so many things, but we just don't have time? So, what is this time that we're after? It's kind of a bit of a it's a bit of an interesting statement to say I'm going to manage my time or I'm going to find more time, because time is essentially a fixed thing, right? There's the way we've constructed it, there are 24 hours in a day, there are 7 days in a week, there are 365 days in a year. Everybody has the same amount of time. And yet we don't. Because as many of us know, as moms and entrepreneurs, it seems like there is never enough time. So the first thing I want us to do is kind of shift this idea around time from thinking about it as minutes going by or time passing by, and think about it instead as energy, right? So what you want to do is you want to manage your energy, not necessarily manage your time. Reason being, you have the same amount of time, but you might not have the same energy that goes into each task, right? So if you ever notice that you're super excited in the morning, you've got a lot of energy, maybe you hit that lull in the afternoon, and then you get more energy in the evening and then get tired and ready to go to bed. And what you want to do is structure it so that you're doing certain activities, right, that require a certain level of energy during the times when you have that energy. So that way, you're getting the task done faster instead of taking longer to do it because you don't have the energy for it. So that's one thing to think about. Now, as I've said in previous lives, there's this neat thing called Parkinson's Law, right? Which says the amount of time it takes to complete something contracts or expands based on the amount of time we have to do it. So my favorite analogy, how quickly we can clean a house when we find out our in-laws will be over in 20 minutes, right? Normally it takes like hours, and suddenly it happens in 19 and a half minutes. And I say that a little bit funny because I don't like to clean my house, and I just think people should love me as I am, so I don't rush around to clean anything for guests. But that's just me. I will never be the person that makes you feel guilty when you come into my house because it's immaculate, and I'm okay with that. So how can you reclaim time? First thing is to become aware. Okay, become aware of your time and how you spend it. I did this for myself a few years ago, and I was amazed at how much time I had that wasn't really being utilized properly. And it's not a conscious thing, right? It's not like we consciously waste time. Nobody really wants to waste time. Everybody wants to maximize their time or use it wisely or all of these things we want to do with time. But often we're not even aware of where the time goes. I mean, have you ever sat down to work on an email and you had one email to send and it was going to take you 5 minutes, and somehow an hour passed by and you're like, I don't even know where that time went, right? I think we've all been there. Whether it's doing enjoyable things or miserable things, we can lose track of time. Think about how long it takes you to, how long does it take for your toddler to put their shoes on by themselves versus how long does it take for you to enjoy your favorite treat, right? It might be the same amount of minutes. It might take your toddler 10 minutes to put their shoes on, and it might take 10 minutes to eat your favorite treat. But I bet you the time spent watching your toddler to put their shoes on feels really long. So what is awareness of time? This really came to me when my kids were young and I had a lot on the go, and I was like, I don't have any time. I never have any time. Why am I always out of time? And people had started bringing it up to me. They were like, you're really obsessed with time, aren't you? And I was like, yes, because I never have any time. And so I did what's called a time clarity exercise. And for a week, instead of scheduling what I was going to do that week, I did my normal planning. But what I did instead is I kept track in 15-minute increments, or, best guess based on, where I was and how convenient it was, what I was doing. And what came up for me was that I spent a lot of time waiting to be needed, right? So I would sit at the kitchen island, scrolling through my phone, waiting for someone to need me. My kids were probably around 3 or 4, and I had gotten so used to always being needed that I just sat and waited for it. And I would scroll through my phone, scroll through social media, check my email. I feel like I had a system. I would go like email 1, email 2, Facebook, Instagram, email 3, repeat the cycle. And I would do that until something caught my attention long enough for me to read it. And I would just be sitting there waiting to be needed. And when I actually saw how much space there was where I was just waiting to be needed, I was like, oh, turns out I do have time. And it added up to a significant amount, right? Like it wasn't just, 5 minutes a day. It was probably all together like hour and a half, 2 hours a day, but in little bits. So that got me thinking, how can I use this time? Because I'm one of those people that it really puts me off when I have to start an activity that I can't finish, right? So if I can't finish something in the time I think I have available, I won't start it. My brain can't get around that. So instead, what I started to do was look really closely at those blocks of time. And I noticed that I usually had about 15 minutes minimum, right? 15 minutes where I would just be sitting. And sometimes it would be half an hour, sometimes it would be 20 minutes, but I had 15 minutes. So I decided to try it out and say, okay, what can I get done in 15 minutes? And I went through the process of reteaching myself what could get done in 15 minutes and how I could chunk down tasks to be 15-minute tasks, right? So instead of on my to-do list having something that said, social media marketing, let's say, which feels like a 3-hour job, I would have reply to 5 people, engage for 5 minutes, post, engage for another 5 minutes. I would have these things broken down into these teeny tiny little tasks that could be done in 15 minutes. And that way, when I had a moment where I was waiting to be needed, instead of just scrolling and surfing through things randomly, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to do my 15-minute task. And I would do it. And surprisingly over time, or not surprisingly looking back, but at the time it was like, I started to get a whole lot done. Even though I didn't have more quote unquote time in a day, I was just reclaiming these little bits of time and using them to further my personal goal. Right. And so it didn't feel like I was, taking hours away from my kids, or I was, neglecting some other responsibility. I was using time that was already available. I was just using it differently. Right. I was injecting more energy into that time. I was spending it doing something that added to my life versus something that maybe took away from it. So that's the first tip, is to bring awareness to it and then find out how you can use the time that you find you do have. The next thing is to have some self-love and compassion, right? The cliche saying is we overestimate how much we can get done in a year. We underestimate how much can get done in 10 years. So we often set ourselves up going into a day with a to-do list that has more to-do items than there are minutes in the day. And we cut out everything for ourselves. So we don't schedule in lunch. We don't schedule in, sitting down to sip our coffee. We don't schedule in, having to pee. We don't put anything in there for ourselves. We just have ourselves booked back to back to back to back to back. And when we look at a list like that, we feel like failure right away, right? We know deep down inside here that we can't do that, right? We know that, doing X, Y, and Z with kids is going to take longer than the 20 minutes we've allocated. We just know these things, but we also feel like we have to get all those things done. And so if we can just have a little bit of grace for ourselves, if we can look and say, what is urgent, right? So what needs to be done, right? What if I miss this deadline, it's actually a problem? Because chances are a lot of stuff isn't in that category. And then after what's urgent and needs to be done so it doesn't create a problem, what is important, right? So what's important to me? Not important, this is a big one, not important to other people. Because when you scan through your to-do list, you'll often find there are a lot of to-dos that are not your to-dos. They are other people's to-dos that you have taken on. So, and that will come up in our third point. But look at what's important. What is important to you? What is important to get done? What matters? What aligns with your values, with your goals for yourself, for your family, for your life? And then what is kind of like cool to do, but not necessary? Or what brings you joy, right? Because then you take your to-do list, you give yourself some grace and recognize that you do not need to be super mom or perfect. And you pare it down and say, okay, I'm going to do what's urgent because it has to be done. Then I'm going to do what's important. And then I'm going to do what brings me joy. Or I'm going to do what brings me joy because that's going to put me in the right mindset to do what's important and urgent. And then I'm good. Right? So cut yourself some slack, have a little bit of grace and compassion for yourself, and pare down that list, right? I mean, we all have moments where we feel guilty for not having the dishes done. Or, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I do not like cleaning. I don't like doing dishes. I don't like cleaning. So I've gotten very good about cutting myself some grace about that. Occasionally I feel a little bit guilty that I'm not, making everything perfect, but it doesn't bring me joy. It really doesn't. And it's not to say that we live in a, hoarder house pigsty, but I am not scrubbing baseboards as a pastime. Let's just put it that way. So cut some stuff off. Now, the third one that I alluded to is this idea of healthy boundaries, right? So saying no when no is what you feel, not saying yes when you want to say no, not doing things out of obligation or have tos. When you say I have to do something, chances are it's an external to do. It is something that someone else has required you to do. And if it is not life or death, or it does not involve, the ability of your child to participate in something, or the ability of you or someone in your family to have a medical procedure done or something like that, if it is not life or death, it's not a have to do, right? And oftentimes, especially we as moms, we get these to-do lists that are a mile long because we take on all these other to-dos that aren't ours, right? They're not ours. Someone's like, oh, can you come to such and such? Oh, okay. Yep. Can you bring a pie? Sure. Why not? Now I've got to make a pie. Oh, now I'm stressed out. I got to make the best pie. Oh my goodness. Now I've got to look up what, the latest pie trends are. We create a lot of chaos and to-dos around other people's needs. That's not to say we shouldn't be kind. And it's not to say it's not great to be considerate, but it doesn't benefit anyone for you to be so consumed with other people's things that you can't take care of yourself and the things that matter to you. Again, it breeds resentment. It sucks the joy out of life. It's a bad road to go down. So when you're looking at your to-do list, when you're doing your awareness thing, reviewing your to-do list, looking at where you spend your time, look at how many things you are doing because somebody else asked you to. And when you're going through that list, listen to your body, right? When you're looking at to-do items that aren't your to-dos, how do you feel? Are you excited about helping someone, about doing that? Does it sound like a fun thing? Are you really jazzed about doing it? Or are you like, I have to do this? Because if you're like, then let it go. And trust me, I know how hard it is to let go of things, because I am a recovering people pleaser and also a recovering super mom who wanted to be on all the boards and wanted to do all the things and needed to be, here, there, and everywhere. And I remember when the first coach told me, I need you to cut one thing from your list. And I was like, oh, right. That dread that comes up about having to disappoint people and tell them that I can't do the things I said I would do. And it was scary. And I did it anyways, because somebody who had gotten to the other side told me it was a good idea. So I did it. And after I worked through the nausea and the self-loathing of it all, I felt better. And so then I did it again. And then I did it again. And then I took a look at my list and I let go of all the things that were marked as urgent because I was worried that other people wouldn't like me. And I got rid of all that shit too. And in the end, were there some people that were upset? Yeah. I mean, I've had, work colleagues say, you're not really on your A game, Angela. Are you really committed? And I was like, yes, absolutely. I am committed. I am committed to the things that matter to me and that bring me joy. And I am no longer committed to living up to other people's expectations. God, that's freeing. So how you reclaim your time in a nutshell, right? First thing, gain awareness. Look at your time and your to-do list. Look at how you're spending your time and who your to-dos belong to. Second thing, self-love and compassion, right? Pare down that to-do list. Get rid of the things that don't need to be done, that aren't urgent, aren't life or death, they don't bring you joy. They aren't important. If something is on your to-do list for a solid week and has not budged, maybe it's time for it to come off. And give yourself grace while you're doing it, right? No judgment, just release. And the third thing is to set healthy boundaries. Say no. Let go of other people's expectations. Do what you feel is right, okay? And breaking down tasks is another little bonus that was in awareness. Break them down. Don't leave. Like, clean house is not a to-do, right? Marketing plan is not a to-do, right? Break it down, into do dishes, or, identify 5 competitors to conduct market research survey on, or something like that. Like, break it down, chunk down those tasks so they become 15, 20-minute tasks that you can do in the open time that you find. Love to hear your thoughts. Any questions, please hit me up. As always, it's been a pleasure. And remember, the woman you see when you look in the mirror is exactly what a successful entrepreneur looks like. Have a great day.